Well, good afternoon, Little Rock. I'm Mayor Frank Scott Jr., and I'm proud to be before you today for Little Rock's first virtual town hall meeting, as we're going to discuss the global pandemic, COVID-19, and its public health emergency. Today we have a number of different individuals with us that are going to answer a myriad of questions. And so for those of you that have been submitting questions and continually are, in the comments on Facebook, a City of Little Rock moderator will be answering your questions there. The City of Little Rock has taken proactive steps to slow the spread of this virus. On March 12th, I declared an emergency for our city to free up resources from the federal and state governments that will assist us in our battle against the virus. We created a task force of Little Rock healthcare professionals and chaired by Dr. and at-large board member, Dr. Dean Curfews, a dear friend of mine, to develop solutions to help Little Rock prepare for the surge in positive cases. We closed city buildings and facilities to public and moved restaurants to takeout, curbside pickup, and delivery only. We put in place a curfew from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. and reminded the public of our youth daytime curfew that is in effect from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. I think all know over the last week or so, we had a bit of an issue with individuals that wanted to have a little bit of cabin fever. And through an executive order this week, we have prohibited caravanning with the purpose of exiting a vehicle to gather in groups of 10 or more. All of these actions have been taken to allow residents and our employees to put distance between themselves and others. This is a serious virus. It is not a game. In fact, we developed a campaign to encourage social distancing. We want Little Rock residents to stay in and tell a friend to do the same. Also, stay home and stay safe. Social distancing saves lives and limits the strain on our healthcare system. Today I have one of our dear members of the Little Rock COVID-19 Healthcare Task Force, Dr. Amanda Novak. Also, we have Chief Keith Humphrey of the Little Rock Police Department. These two individuals will be joining me today as we help one another to answer these questions of yours. So as we move forward, we have a few questions that are first going to come from many residents, including Cynthia, Yates, Melissa, and Z. Rose. So here's the first question. Why can't Little Rock issue its own stay-at-home order? Well, Dr. Novak and Chief, I'll answer that question. As a mayor in the state of Arkansas under the state emergency order, a mayor cannot unilaterally issue a shelter-in-place order due to the commerce restriction in the governor's state of emergency order. However, we found creative ways to ensure that we protect lives and save lives by instituting our curfews both day and night, as well as limiting gatherings in place. So that is the answer. No mayor in the state of Arkansas could institute a shelter-in-place order without the governor's approval due to the commerce restriction and the state of emergency order for the state of Arkansas issued by the governor. Now, Dr. Novak, we got a question from you from an anonymous submission. What are the requirements/symptoms one must have to be tested? Dr. Novak?
Sure. So the most common symptoms of COVID-19 are fever and cough and shortness of breath. A lot of people also complain of sore throat or runny nose, and some people even have some GI symptoms like nausea or vomiting. So not everyone that has mild symptoms necessarily needs to go out and get tested. For a lot of people, this will have a mild course that can be treated at home. But for those that are having those symptoms, and especially if there's some known exposure to someone else that had the virus, then that's when we would want someone to get tested. Most of the time, it's not very useful to test someone who doesn't have any symptoms at all, because the test isn't always very accurate before symptoms develop.
Well, thank you so much for that answer, Dr. Novak. We have another question. This one, another anonymous question. I think this one is from Yates. What is the testing capacity for COVID-19 in Little Rock?
So the short answer is that we can test as many people as we need to by using commercial reference labs around the country. And so there are labs all over the country that we can send out to that can get those results back in just a few days. For a more rapid turnaround time, our capacity in the city is a little bit more limited, but it's also growing regularly. So between the health department and a couple of the hospitals here in town that have some equipment able to run these tests, we're able to run some a small handful for people that are hospitalized or very high risk of complications for COVID-19, and that capacity is expected to grow. But even while that is still limited, if we need to get someone tested, we can still do that. We just have to send it out to a reference lab, and it takes a little bit longer to get those results.
Well, Dr. Novak, if anyone that's watching the news right now, we often hear this word peak or the apex, whether it's Governor Cuomo or President Trump or Governor Hutchinson or whomever, the state, local, national leader that's discussing COVID-19, this word peak means something. And so what's Arkansas's peak as it relates to number of confirmed cases, and when will we hit it?
Well, we all like to try to predict the future, and so far I haven't found anyone that could actually do that. The truth is, you don't know the peak until after it's passed, because that's how you know it's a peak, is because the numbers start to go down afterwards. I will say that the models that have been used to try to predict the number of cases in Arkansas have predicted that we would have higher numbers than we do right now, and I don't think that's an accident, and I don't think that's because anyone was overestimating. I think it's because of the actions that we've taken have actually made a big difference in curbing the growth of the virus in our community. So as far as how many cases we'll have at the end of all this, I think that's a really difficult thing to say. I think the more important thing is that when we're at our peak, that we're still well within the capacity of our healthcare system. And so the lower we can keep the peak stretched over a longer period of time, the more likely our hospitals are to be able to keep up with that. And right now, the latest predictions have said April 25th, April 27th. I heard a few predictions today saying that maybe later into May, because our growth has been so much slower than was expected at this point. I think it's a difficult thing to predict, but I do think that some of these models are helpful as we plan for a surge, as we plan for increased numbers from our baseline. Those can be helpful for us to make sure we have enough beds and enough doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists to actually take care of patients as they get sick. But I think to predict when the peak will be is to act like there's not anything we can do to modify that. And that's just not true. We still have a lot of things we can do to change when that peak happens and how high it is when it happens.
Well, I just want to thank you again. We've been in several meetings together, and you've been a commanding voice on how we can slow the spread, and have been advising me. So thank you so much as we try to figure out when the peak is, but do all we can to slow that spread. The next question is from Caleb. What is the city doing to address overcrowding at our parks along the river, Murray, Two Rivers, Big Dam Bridge? I routinely bike these routes and have never seen so many people gathered at them as I have in the last few weeks. Far too many people walking along the bridge in close proximity and gathering at pavilions and not practicing physical distancing guidelines. Well, the answer to that, Mr. Caleb, is I continue to encourage people to stay in and to please do not congregate. We have mandates in place right now that are ceasing gathering, and so we are continuing to monitor, and as we see them, whether it's the Little Rock Police Department or our fire marshals, we are working to engage, to educate, and to enforce. And so you will begin to see more enforcement measures to strengthen the slow of the spread with individuals that are at those particular parks that you referenced. So thank you so much, Mr. Caleb. Chief, from a public safety perspective, please provide insight on this question as well.
Well, thank you, Mayor. One of the things that we had to realize in the Little Rock Police Department is that part of our responsibility is public safety. And anytime that you have a pandemic or anything that causes something to interfere with the safety of our citizens, we take that seriously. So our main focus is to, when we see these large groups, especially during the daytime, groups of 10 or more, our focus is to remind everyone of the pandemic. We remind everyone of what Governor Hutchinson has said. Our main focus is educating. We talked about the 3 E's, the engagement, the education, and the enforcement. And so that's what we're trying to do. Let's move forward to individuals that are violating the curfew. Once this curfew has been put into place, We have continually monitored our locations that we feel that would have large gatherings, and we continue to educate the community regarding the danger of being gathered up of 10 or more. And so we've reached a point now where we are starting to enforce, and that means writing a citation regarding the curfew, the city curfew. That's not something that we take pride in doing, but we feel because of the danger of COVID-19, it's our responsibility to ensure that people understand that this is a very serious pandemic, and that the governor and the mayor have issued directives for a reason, and that reason is we need to stay in and tell a friend, because we need to reduce the chances of someone contracting COVID-19.
Well, thank you, Chief. One other portion I do want to add to, I know our Parks Department has done a good job, and we'll begin to see many of the parking lots. We see a lot of people that are gathering in the parking lots. We'll be barricading those parking lots. We've taken down volleyball nets and basketball goals. Again, these are measures that we do not want to take. However, we're doing this out of abundance of caution to protect lives in our city. And so also with this particular weekend going forward as well, we'll be closing a few parks, I believe at Murray and Rimmel and Butler parks, that we'll be closing as well to kind of ensure that these gatherings cease. Right now we have another question from Katrina. Here's Katrina's question. City parks seem to be sparsely used even on an average day or weekend, so why close? It is the state's parks outside of Little Rock metro area that seem to be the issue. Well, one of the things I will say to Ms. Katrina, that we have the authority over our city parks, and we have seen and continue to see others that are gathering at these parks. And yes, and we do have some state parks that are within the Little Rock city lines. And so, but what we have control over are the city parks, and we're going to continue to use every measure possible to limit the social gathering at those particular parks. So thank you so much for that question. The next question we have is from Miss Angie, and that question states, where can residents find a map of the trails within the parks that are suggested for social distancing? Well, you can go to littlerock.gov/COVID-19, and you can find that information there from our Parks Department. To that question, now we have another anonymous question submission, and that question is, can you provide the details of both curfews, because there are people still not obeying the curfew? Chief Humphrey, can you handle that for me?
Absolutely. Great question. The curfew is very clear. From 9 p.m. To 5 a.m., there should be no one out in public. The mayor's made it very clear. That is why he issued the order that we need to stay in. And so those are the times that we can prevent, we believe that we can assist in preventing more people from being in public. It is not this isn't punitive. This is a safety issue, and we have to make sure that we are abiding by that. The other thing is we are also focusing on any type of large groups that we believe that put the community in danger. And when I say the community, I'm talking about our citizens, our visitors, I'm talking about our law enforcement, any other first responders. We're talking about how can we prevent that. And so our main focus is, I go back to what I said earlier, is we have, I believe in the last 2 weeks, we have done an amazing job of not enforcing, but educating our community on the dangers. And so we're looking, at this point, we believe that anyone that's out after 9 o'clock by now should have the message. And our focus is being the enforcement part of it. The other side is we have to remember that there is a curfew during the day, a daytime curfew for our youth. And the main thing is that these kids have to realize, and the parents have to realize, they are in school, whether they're physically in school or not. They have guidelines to abide by, continue to make sure that they are doing their homework and assignments. And so when you have children out between the daytime curfew, we're holding the parents responsible for that. And so those are the focuses that we're on right now.
Well, thank you so much, Chief, for that detailed answer regarding our curfews. But we also, too, have in one of our executive orders is the prohibition of caravanning. And so we want individuals to know that there's no permission to be caravanning during any time of the day, whether it's a curfew or not, during the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, this is to prevent the spread. And the question would be, how are you preventing the spread if people are driving a vehicle? Well, when you're caravanning, you have the intent to exit the vehicle. You then are now violating the social gathering clause from the governor as well as from the city. And so that's just another action that we're taking and to really help understand the community to really take this virus seriously. Believe me, we don't want to issue these type of executive orders, and we're only doing it to protect your life and your loved one's life and to protect the entire city of Little Rock's lifeblood. So that's the reason why. The next question we have from Miss Barbara. I read obituaries in the paper that announced funerals with no mention of private or virtual services. Are these a violation of the group of 10 or less social distancing policy? Is there any way to stop these gatherings? Well, again, yes, the governor has instituted a social gathering policy of no more than 10. However, there is an exemption for funeral services, but in that same exemption for funeral services, the governor has asked for funeral homes and churches to have some type of discretion. We really don't want to infringe upon a loved one in that particular situation, but we have seen and continue to see many of the funeral homes only allowing close family members and friends at the actual funeral service of being no more than 10, and then live streaming or Facebook Living the funeral service to other loved ones going forward. And so we are seeing this being enacted, and we're very appreciative of the funeral home industry that are complying with the social gathering policy and becoming creative with this. And so that's the reason why you haven't seen whether it is a virtual service or a regular service, but we can assure you that we have the understanding that many, maybe not all, but many of our funeral homes are practicing the social distancing policy and live streaming the remaining portion for the other families. Okay, Rob has a question. Rob says, can you tell me why public transportation is still running? If anything, is there a disinfectant plan in place? Well, Rob, as you know, Rock Region Metro is led by Charles Frazier. It is meant, public transit is a meaningful public policy no matter where you are from a state perspective or a local perspective. But you should know, in our understanding, that we have in place, we being the Rock Region Metro, have put in place social distancing plans. And so there are no more than 10 individuals that are on the vehicle. And yes, they are being disinfected on each ride multiple times a day. But we also understand that many of these individuals that are riding are really going to essential services, which is to their grocery store workers, they are restaurant workers, they are individuals that are part of the healthcare working community. And so they still too need the ability to get to an essential service for themselves. But we are taking every measure, we being the Rock Region Metro led by Charles Frazier, to disinfect the seats and the entire vehicle each trip. I think we have another question with us today. Let's see who else has come. But Chief, one of the things before, I think we are done with the questions for right now, but Chief, if you would, before you sign off, and just help us just to kind of talk through anything that you want to say before we transition to Jay Cheshire, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce, who's going to discuss a lot of economic issues and how we're responding for our displaced workers, first and foremost, and our small business community who are being very strained right now and are the lifeblood and backbone of Little Rock's economy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The main thing I want our citizens to know is that we are your police department, and we take any type of safety issue very seriously. Our focus is not to be punitive. Our focus is to help our community stay safe, to help our community stay vibrant. One of the things that we are also focusing on is anything that we feel that would hinder the safety of our community. As the mayor said, he's put an order in place that talks about the prevention of caravanning. And one of the things people ask, well, what is caravanning? It's when you have more than 5 to 10 vehicles that are traveling on a roadway, not just one way, but they circle and they go back and they continue to do this, where you're impeding traffic. And so we're wanting to prevent that. But we also want the citizens of our city to understand, we know as the Little Rock Police Department that you're going to have, our citizens are traveling back and forth to work, back and forth to church, back and forth to the store. You don't have to, we're not talking about that. We're talking about individuals who are intentionally impeding. We understand if you're going home, that's fine. We expect, you have to go home. But this is not, this order is not to address individuals who are abiding the law. These are individuals who are impeding and preventing our citizens from traveling freely to destinations where they need to go. So we just want to share that's one of the things that I wanted to get out there to the community, that we understand and we want people to travel without feeling that they're going to be stopped.
Thanks, Chief. I really do appreciate you and your leadership and all the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department who are waking up each and every day to protect our city. We are grateful for you and grateful for all of them. We'll be right back along with Dr. Amanda Novak, as well as Jay Cheshire, who is our Chief Executive Officer of the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce. Hi, I'm Mayor Frank Scott Jr. As you know, our city is facing a threat we've never seen before. One that challenges our resolve and discipline to protect ourselves, as well as our neighbors. My team and I, and a host of your dedicated friends and neighbors, are working around the clock to protect our great city from the COVID-19 virus. However, we can't do it alone. You must do your part. That's why I'm asking all citizens, stay home and stay safe. Better yet, stay in and tell a friend. Say it with me, stay in and tell a friend. Social distancing saves lives. The best way to prevent illness is to avoid being exposed. Clean your hands often and avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick and put distance between yourself and others. Lastly, get the facts and latest updates at littlerock.gov/COVID-19. That's littlerock.gov/COVID-19. Remember, stay home, stay safe. Stay in and tell a friend. Little Rock, welcome back to part 2 of our virtual town hall meeting. We continue to be happy to have Dr. Amanda Novak, who specializes in infectious disease at Baptist Health right here in Little Rock. We also have Jay Cheshire, who is the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive Officer. So let's go to some of our questions. Jay, here's a question for you. It comes from Amber. I work for myself as a nail technician and was forced to cease operations. What federal programs exist to help me?
So first of all, there's a significant amount of different programs that have now come online, both from the state's perspective as well as the federal government's perspective, that you likely qualify for. So instead of answering the question with a specific program that may or may not work, I want to make sure that first of all, you get access to the information so that you can, with your banker as well, determine what's best for you. First of all, the city has a lot of this information on their website. The Little Rock Regional Chamber has all of this information on the front page of our website. You do not have to be a member to access this information. So first of all, go there. Secondly, in the past, you wouldn't have qualified for a lot of these programs by being a sole proprietor or working for yourself. Today, with the new federal act, you do qualify, and so we would really suggest that you go forth and look at all of this information so that we can determine what's best for you.
Well, Jay, I think that's a great answer, but also for individuals who may not have a banker, that there are a number of banks right now that are becoming well aware of these new rules and regs that Jay has just shared with you. And so if you go to a participating bank here in Little Rock, they can give you as much information as possible as well. Here's another question, Jay. Stephen has asked, I've had to close my business and lay off my employees because of COVID-19, but I've heard confusing messages about how to get help. So help. Jay, please provide some insight to Stephen.
So Stephen, there are 2 specific programs that you would qualify for. First is a loan program through the SBA. It's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that first of all would provide you with working capital to keep your business operating, number one. Number 2, the Paycheck protection program that was just recently passed with the CARES Act also provides you with the opportunity to get the payroll protection that you need to keep your employees hired. So you would qualify for both of those programs, by which you could also, as the mayor just said, either access through a local banker, go through the SBA, through the Farm Credit Administration. Many other places are also available to help, but the key here is please go get in line, get your applications put together so that we can get you the help and your employees the help that they need.
Well, thank you so much, Jay. We have a question now from Stephanie, and the question states, how will we know when the crisis is over and it is safe to be around people again? Well, I don't think that's a question for you, Jay. I think that's a question for Dr. Amanda Novak. Can you help us with that?
Sure, and it's not an easy answer. There's a few ways that pandemics end. One is that finally enough people can get infected and become immune to the virus that we have what we call herd immunity, and there's just really no one else to spread the virus to. That doesn't mean everyone has to get infected, but that a certain amount of the population has to have some immunity to the virus, and that can take a while to come about, and that's not really the ideal way. There's some other factors. A lot of these viral respiratory illnesses are seasonal, and so there's a chance that during the summer months when we don't see very much influenza or RSV, there's a chance that we'll get an upper edge on the coronavirus as well, and that might give us a little bit of reprieve from the spread of the virus. And then probably the most optimistic way that this ends is with better treatments and better vaccine options, which certainly all around the world there are a lot of people working on right now. So this is going to be more of a marathon than a sprint. I think that there are controlled ways that we'll be able to engage in life again, and it's helpful for me to remember that this will definitely end, that pandemics don't last forever, that this will be a finite amount of time, even though it feels like a very long time right now. I think it will be, there will be a very controlled response from the government and the health department, giving us some indication of when it's safe for us to start interacting again.
Well, thank you, Dr. Novak. We have now a few anonymous questions. One of the questions is, why are tanning salons still open? Well, Dr. Novak, I'll kind of take that question. I do know already that through Governor Hutchinson and Secretary of Health, Dr. Nate Smith, that all tanning salons, that includes med spas, hair, any type of tanning salon in that situation has already received a directive from the Governor and the Secretary of Health that they should be closed. And so we ask that that you're seeing someone that's doing that, there's appropriate measures in place with the Arkansas Department of Health to have that handled. The next anonymous question that we have are courts still open? Well, that answer is that many of the courts are experiencing very limited schedules right now. Many have gone virtual, but you will have to go to littlerock.gov to kind of get that schedule for the Little Rock district courts, and then check with the county, with the Pulaski County courts, and then also with the federal courts. But right now, clearly with the COVID-19 pandemic, they're on limited schedules at this point in time. This next question, which is another anonymous submission, is there a moratorium on evictions? Well, what we understand right now is that the governor has asked that all landlords be compassionate during this time of this pandemic and public health emergency. We know right now in Pulaski County, many of the Pulaski County judges have already shared that they would not, to our knowledge, not be quickly enforcing the evictions of those said landlord evictions. And so at this point in time, we're just really asking those landlords to please be compassionate during this period of time. Next question. This one should be for you, Jay. It's another anonymous one. For those that are being laid off due to COVID-19, are employers required to bring employees back into their positions once it has passed? Jay, any details on that you can provide?
So a couple of things in regard to that question. First of all, if you've been laid off, you're now eligible not only for the Department of Workforce Services unemployment check that you're always going to be eligible for, but as of this week, the new federal benefit of $600 per week also kicks in. So if you're unemployed, first of all, please go ahead and apply for that help, because it will help you. Secondly, there are also programs like the Paycheck Protection Program for those employers that even if you can't keep your workforce through the entire crisis, if you hire them back immediately afterwards, then that will also become a forgivable loan for you. So from an employer standpoint, even if you can't maintain your existing payroll through the crisis, you can still apply for this program. If you're willing to immediately hire those folks following the end of this crisis, then you too can also have that loan forgiven. So from an employee standpoint, new benefits available as of this week. Please get with the DWS folks so that you can get your application in and become eligible, especially for the additional federal benefit. From an employer standpoint, you also are now eligible for things that you didn't have access to last week. So go apply. And I made the statement earlier, Mayor, about getting in line. All of these institutions, the SBA, the 7A bank lenders, all of them have now web portals by which people can apply online. So you can be socially distant at your own computer and apply for these programs and not have to physically be next to someone.
Thanks, Jay. But we have one more question for you. It's another anonymous one. And the question is, we're hearing a lot about the shared work program. What is that? Jay?
That's a great question, Mayor. You know, a lot of businesses are still operating at the moment, but operating with reduced hours for employees. The shared work program through the Department of Workforce Services allows companies to do so, pay their employees for the part-time work that they're doing, but then also make them eligible for unemployment for the percentage of work that they're now no longer doing, and make them eligible for the new federal $600 a week benefit. So companies that are still operating but only with reduced employees hours can use this program to really help get through this crisis.
Well, Jay, thank you so much. That was some really good and vital information that you just shared about the shared work program, so we appreciate you. Our final question for today is from Elizabeth. And the question is, how can I donate masks? Well, Elizabeth, I just want to first say thank you for your generosity. Right now, the Little Rock has an emergency donation center as well as an emergency relief fund. And so we have some information there. So number one is we really want individuals to email information to lrcares@littlerock.gov to donate PPE equipment. And also, if you want to make a donation, you can go to littlerock.gov/COVID-19, and there is a button placed for the Emergency Relief Fund. And to the viewers out there, thank you so much for taking time and your attention to listen to this information. Please share this information with others. It's going to take all of us to work together, to communicate with one another as we find creative solutions to get through this journey together. And we will do that. We will get through this journey. We ask that everyone continue to show love and compassion during these trying times. And if we show love and compassion and we serve one another, we will experience brighter days. So stay in and tell a friend.